The ledger lay open on the counter between them, and Priscilla Garrett knew with sickening certainty that the ink-stained pages held more than just accounts of flour and coffee beans. They held her future, bound as tight as any iron shackles, and the man across from her wore the satisfied smile of someone who owned not just a trading post but a human soul. It was September of 1876, and boys, Idaho was still rough around the edges, a settlement where the rules bent according to who held the power and the gold. Priscilla had arrived 3 months earlier on a dusty stagecoach, fleeing a past in Ohio that had crumbled when her father's debts became her inheritance. The trading post owner, Cyrus Blackwell, had offered her work, a room in the back, and what seemed like salvation. She had been 19 years old and desperate, which made her the perfect prey. The realization had come slowly, like winter creeping down from the mountains. First, Cyrus kept her wages in the ledger rather than paying her directly, claiming it was safer that way. Then he began adding charges for her room, her meals, the dress he insisted she needed to look presentable to customers. The numbers grew while her hope shrank, and now, 3 months later, she owed him more than she could earn in 2 years. "You understand how it is, Miss Garrett," Cyrus said, his thick fingers drumming on the counter. He was a bulky man of 40-some years, with thinning hair he combed over his scalp and eyes that never quite met hers directly. "Business is business. You owe me $347. Until that is paid, you work here. Simple mathematics." Priscilla's hands trembled as she gripped her apron. "But you are charging me more than my wages each week. The debt only grows. Then you will need to work harder or perhaps find alternative arrangements." His smile widened, showing yellowed teeth. "I am a reasonable man. I might be persuaded to forgive the debt entirely if you were to become Mrs. Blackwell." The words hit her like a physical blow. She stepped back, her heart hammering against her ribs. "I would never think carefully before you refuse," Cyrus interrupted, his voice dropping to something harder. "Where will you go? Who will hire a girl who breaks her contracts? I have friends in this territory, Miss Garrett. Sheriffs, judges, businessmen. They understand the importance of honoring debts. Try to leave, and I will have you arrested for theft of services. You will work off your debt in a jail cell if necessary, or you can be sensible." The door chimed as a customer entered, and Cyrus's expression shifted instantly to one of jovial welcome. Priscilla turned away, blinking back tears of rage and helplessness. She moved mechanically through her tasks, measuring out cornmeal for a miner's wife, wrapping dried apples in brown paper, all while her mind raced like a trapped animal searching for escape. The afternoon sun slanted through the dusty windows when the cowboy walked in. Priscilla had seen many men pass through the trading post, but something about him made her look up from the inventory she was pretending to count. He was tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of creek water, gray-green and clear. His hat was pushed back on his head, revealing brown hair that needed cutting, and he moved with an easy confidence that suggested he was comfortable in his own skin in a way she envied. "Help you?" Cyrus called from behind the counter, barely looking up from his newspaper. "Need supplies for a trail drive," the cowboy said. His voice was quiet but carrying with a slight drawl that spoke of Texas or thereabouts. "We are moving cattle up through here, heading north. Need coffee, salt, beans, bacon if you have it. Enough for 12 men, 3 weeks. "Priscilla will help you," Cyrus said dismissively, turning a page of his paper. She stepped forward, grateful for something to occupy her hands and mind. "We have everything you need. If you want to tell me quantities, I can start gathering it." The cowboy looked at her directly then, and she saw his eyes catch on her face for a moment longer than necessary. not with the calculating assessment of Cyrus, but with something gentler, almost concerned. "You all right, miss?" The question, asked so simply, nearly undid her. She blinked rapidly and forced her voice to steadiness. "I am fine, thank you. The supplies—" He studied her for another moment, then began listing what he needed. His name was Finn Hawthorne. She learned as they worked, and he was the trail boss for a cattle operation out of southern Idaho, moving a herd north to the rail lines. He was 24 years old and had been working cattle since he was barely tall enough to reach a stirrup. "You are young to be a trail boss," Priscilla observed, surprising herself by making conversation. Something about his steady presence made her want to talk, to reach toward normalcy. "Old enough to know which end of a cow moves faster when you are trying to avoid it," Finn replied, and the corner of his mouth twitched in what might have been humor. "Been doing this work since I was 14. Some men learn quick and some men learn dead. I learned quick." She found herself almost smiling as she measured coffee beans into a cloth sack. "That is a grim way of putting it." "It is a grim business sometimes. Beautiful too, though. There is nothing like being out under all that sky with a good horse under you and the cattle moving easy. Makes a man feel both small and free at the same time." He paused, then added quietly, "You look like someone who could use some freedom." Her hand stilled on the scoop. "I do not know what you mean." "I think you do." Finn glanced toward where Cyrus sat, then back to her. "I have seen men who trap things. Animals mostly, but sometimes people. That fellow has the look." "You are mistaken," Priscilla said quickly, but her voice shook. "He is my employer. I owe him money and I am working to repay it. That is all." Finn did not argue, but she could feel him watching her as she finished assembling his supplies. The bill came to $43, and he paid in gold coin without question. As she wrapped the last package, her fingers brushed his hand, and the brief contact felt like touching something solid in a world that had become insubstantial as smoke. "We are camped about 2 miles north of town," Finn said as he gathered his purchases. "Along the river where the cottonwoods grow thick. If you ever need anything, Miss Garrett, anything at all, you come find me there. I owe a debt to a woman who helped me once when I had nothing. Maybe it is time I paid that forward." Before she could respond, he tipped his hat and left, the door swinging shut behind him. Priscilla stood frozen, his words echoing in her mind. Was he offering help, real help? Or was it a cruel joke, a dangled hope that would vanish like morning frost? "You were talking too much with that customer," Cyrus said sharply. "Remember your place, girl. You are here to work, not to flirt with cowboys." "I was not flirting. I was making a sale." "I will decide what you were doing." He stood and walked to her, close enough that she could smell the tobacco on his breath. "You belong to me until that debt is paid, Priscilla. The sooner you accept that, the easier your life will be. Now get to the back and start supper. I want venison stew tonight." She fled to the small kitchen behind the store, her throat tight with unshed tears. The walls felt closer every day, the air thinner. She prepared the stew mechanically, her mind cycling through impossible plans. She had no money, no horse, no friends in this town. Even if she ran, where would she go? Cyrus had been right about one thing. He had connections, and a woman alone was vulnerable in ways that made her stomach turn. But Finn Hawthorne's eyes had been kind, and he had told her where to find him. That night, lying on her narrow cot in the cramped room that smelled of flour and mouse droppings, Priscilla made her decision. She would not marry Cyrus Blackwell. She would not spend her life trapped in this place, watching her dreams crumble into dust while a man she despised claimed ownership of her future. If there was even a chance that the cowboy had meant his offer, she would take it. She waited 3 more days, watching and learning Cyrus's patterns. He went to the saloon every evening after closing the store, spending 2 or 3 hours drinking and playing cards. That was her window. On the third night, after he left and she heard his footsteps fade down the boardwalk, Priscilla gathered the few possessions she could call her own. A change of clothes, her mother's silver locket, a small leather-bound book of poetry that had been a gift from her brother before he died. Everything fit into a canvas bag small enough to carry. She crept through the darkened store, her heart pounding so hard she feared it would give her away. The front door was locked, but she knew the back entrance remained unbarred. She was 3 steps from freedom when she saw the ledger lying on the counter in a shaft of moonlight. The ledger. The record of her supposed debt, the shackles made of ink and paper. Priscilla stopped, staring at it. If Cyrus had that ledger, he could claim she owed him anywhere he found her. He could show it to lawmen and judges, could use it to drag her back or have her arrested. But if the ledger did not exist anymore, her hands moved before her mind fully caught up. She grabbed the heavy book and tucked it under her arm. Then she slipped out the back door into the cool September night. The 2 miles to the cattle camp felt like 20. Priscilla jumped at every sound, certain she would hear Cyrus's voice shouting behind her, feel his hand grabbing her collar. The moon was bright enough to light the road, and she followed it north until she saw the orange glow of campfires through the cottonwood trees. She approached slowly, suddenly aware of how this looked. A woman alone, appearing at a cattle camp in the middle of the night. Cowboys looked up as she entered the circle of firelight, their conversations dying away. One man stood, his hand moving toward the gun at his hip. "Looking for someone, miss?" he asked, not unkindly but wary. "Finn Hawthorne," she said, and was grateful her voice did not shake. "He told me to come here if I needed help. I need help." There was a moment of silence, and then Finn emerged from one of the bedrolls laid out under the stars. He wore only his shirt and trousers, his suspenders hanging loose, and his hair was rumpled from sleep. But his eyes were alert as they found hers. "Miss Garrett." He crossed to her in quick strides. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "No, yes, I do not know." The words tumbled out in a rush. "I left. I took the ledger and I left, and when he finds out, he is going to come after me. He will say I stole from him, and he will have me arrested or worse, and I do not know what to do, but you said if I needed help." "Easy," Finn said gently. He reached out as if to steady her, then seemed to think better of touching her and let his hands fall. "You did right coming here. You are safe. Nobody is going to hurt you. The hell is going on?" Another cowboy asked, standing up. He was older, with gray shot through his beard. "This is Miss Garrett from the trading post in town," Finn said, not taking his eyes off Priscilla. "She is in trouble and needs help. That is all any of you need to know right now." His voice carried an authority that stopped any further questions. "Miss Garrett, you are shaking. Come sit by the fire. When did you last eat?" "I do not remember." She let him guide her to a spot near the flames and sank down gratefully. The warmth felt like the first kind thing to touch her in months. Finn disappeared and returned with a tin cup of coffee and a plate of beans and cornbread left over from supper. "Eat," he said. "Then you can tell me everything, or not if you would rather not. But you are safe here, I promise you that." Priscilla ate because her body demanded it, though she barely tasted the food. The other cowboys had returned to their bedrolls or quiet conversations, though she felt their occasional glances. Finn sat across from her, patient and still, waiting. Finally, she set down the plate and met his eyes. In the firelight they looked darker, more amber than green. "The trading post owner, Cyrus Blackwell, he trapped me in debt. False debt. He kept adding charges and raising prices for my room and food more than my wages could cover. He said I could not leave until I paid him, and then he told me he would forgive it all if I married him." Her voice cracked on the last word. I would rather die. Finn's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping in his cheek. Did he hurt you? Touch you? No, not like that, but he would have. I could see it in his eyes, the way he looked at me, like I was property he had already purchased. She pulled the ledger from her bag. This is his record of what he claims I owe, $347. It is all lies, but it does not matter. The law would take his word over mine. Let me see that. Finn took the ledger and opened it, tilting the pages toward the firelight. His expression grew darker as he read. This is fraud. Look at this. He charges you $4 a week for a room, but the hotel in town rents rooms for $2 and $5 a week for food. A man can eat well for half that. I know. But who would believe me? Finn was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. Then he stood abruptly and walked to the edge of the camp. Priscilla watched, uncertain, as he knelt and began gathering dried grass and small twigs. He carried them back to the fire and tossed them into the flames, then held up the ledger. What are you doing? She asked. Burning evidence of a crime, Finn said. This book is a lie used to enslave you. It does not deserve to exist. But if you burn it, he will say I stole it. That will make things worse. Will it? Think about it, Miss Garrett. Right now he has proof of debt, false as it is. Without this ledger, what does he have? His word against yours. And if anyone asks me, I will swear I saw you working off a fair debt and leaving honorably. I will say the same thing I am about to do right now actually happened the proper way. She stared at him. You would lie for me, risk trouble with the law. I would tell the truth for you. The truth is that you are a free woman who does not owe that man a damned thing. This ledger is the lie. Finn looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something fierce and protective that made her breath catch. You came to me for help, Miss Garrett. I am giving it. Question is, do you trust me? It was insane. She had known this man for less than a week, spoken to him for a sum total of maybe 30 minutes. He was a stranger, a cowboy who lived on the trail, someone who owed her nothing. Every practical bone in her body screamed that this was foolish. But she had learned in recent months that practical thinking could be a cage all its own. Sometimes you had to take a leap into darkness and pray someone caught you. I trust you, Priscilla whispered. Finn held her gaze for a moment longer, then nodded once. He touched the ledger to the flames, and the dry pages caught instantly. The fire consumed Cyrus Blackwell's lies with hungry enthusiasm, reducing $347 of fictional debt to ash and smoke that drifted up toward the stars. They watched it burn in silence. When the last page crumbled into ember, Finn dusted his hands and sat back down across from her. Now, he said, let us talk about what happens next. That man will come looking for you, probably at first light when he discovers you are gone. We are moving the herd out tomorrow afternoon, heading north. You can come with us if you want. We will get you somewhere safe, somewhere he cannot reach. Or if you would rather, I can give you money for a stagecoach ticket anywhere you want to go. Your choice. Why are you helping me? The question came out barely above a whisper. You do not know me. I could be a liar. I could be a thief. You are not. Finn said it with complete certainty. I have been reading people and animals all my life. You learn to do that when your safety depends on knowing if a horse is about to buck or a man is about to draw. You have honest eyes, Miss Garrett, scared but honest. Besides, I told you, I owe a debt to someone who helped me. Her name was Clara, and she was a widow woman who found me half dead from fever when I was 15 and alone. She nursed me for 3 weeks, fed me, asked nothing in return. By the time I was well enough to thank her properly, she had passed in her sleep. I swore then I would pay forward what she gave me. This is me keeping that promise. Tears stung Priscilla's eyes, the first she had allowed to fall in months. If I go with you, where will we end up? Montana Territory. Town called Virginia City. I know people there, good people. You could find work, real work with fair pay, or we could take you somewhere else if you prefer. You do not have to decide tonight. Sleep on it. You are safe here. One of the other cowboys, the gray-bearded one, called over. Finn, you want me to take first watch, give you time to sort things. Appreciate it, Ben. Finn turned back to Priscilla. We will set you up with blankets. Nobody will bother you. You have my word, and these men know I keep my word. She nodded, exhaustion suddenly crashing over her like a wave. Finn disappeared and returned with bedding, which he arranged near the fire but not so close she would be in anyone's way. Priscilla lay down fully clothed, her canvas bag as a pillow, and stared up at the vast sweep of stars overhead. She had burned her bridges. There was no going back now. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called, and the cattle lowed softly in response. The sound should have been frightening, but instead they felt like freedom. When Priscilla woke, the sun was barely clearing the mountains and the camp was already stirring. Cowboys were rolling up bedrolls, checking horses, heating coffee over rekindled fires. She sat up, disoriented for a moment, then remembered. She was free. The ledger was ash, and Cyrus Blackwell was going to be furious. Finn appeared at her elbow with a cup of coffee. Morning. How did you sleep? Better than I have in weeks. She accepted the coffee gratefully. Thank you for everything. You are welcome. Now we need to talk quickly. I rode into town before dawn just to see what was happening. Blackwell knows you are gone. He is telling everyone you are a thief who stole money from his till and ran off with his ledger. He has the sheriff looking for you. Priscilla's blood ran cold. I did not steal any money. I know that. But he is clever. He probably took money from his own till to make the story convincing. Finn crouched beside her, his expression serious. Here is what I am thinking. We leave now, not this afternoon. Get ahead of any search party. The herd is ready to move and we can make good time if we push. By nightfall we will be far enough away that they will not find us easily. Will you get in trouble for this? For helping me, maybe. But I would get in more trouble with myself if I did not. He smiled then, quick and genuine, and it transformed his face. Besides, I never liked that trading post. Blackwell overcharges for everything. Despite everything, Priscilla almost laughed. So this is partially about economics, partially about doing what is right. Now come on, have some breakfast and then we ride. The camp broke faster than she would have thought possible. Within an hour, the cattle were moving, a river of brown and white flowing north through the valley. Finn put Priscilla on a gentle mare named Daisy and positioned her in the middle of the group, surrounded by cowboys and cattle both. Stay close, he told her. If anything spooks the herd, just hold on and Daisy will get you clear. She is smart. The day passed in a blur of dust and movement. Priscilla had ridden before, but never like this, never for hours at a stretch with the sun beating down and the landscape rolling endlessly away in all directions. Her body ached, but there was something exhilarating about it too. She was moving. She was free. Every mile put more distance between her and the trading post. Finn rode up and down the line, checking on the cattle and the men, but he came back to her often. Sometimes he would ride alongside for a while, pointing out landmarks or telling her about the trail. Other times he would just check that she was all right and then move on. His presence was steady, reassuring. They camped that night beside a creek, and Priscilla helped where she could, gathering wood and water. The cowboys were kind in a rough, awkward way, tipping their hats and calling her Miss, and making sure she had enough to eat. Ben, the older cowboy, even offered her an extra blanket. Nights get cold this time of year, he said gruffly. You are not used to sleeping rough. I will learn, Priscilla said, and meant it. Finn found her after supper when the stars were beginning to emerge. "Walk with me." They strolled to the edge of the creek away from the campfires. The water burbled over rocks, a soothing sound in the darkness. For a while they stood in companionable silence. "How are you holding up?" Finn asked finally. "I am all right. Sore, but all right." Priscilla wrapped her arms around herself. "I keep expecting to wake up and find this is a dream. Or a trap." "It is not a trap, I promise you that." "Why?" the question burst out of her. "Why are you doing this, really? The story about Clara is beautiful, but there must be more to it. You are risking everything for me." Finn was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was low and thoughtful. "I suppose because I know what it is like to be trapped. Not the way you were, but trapped all the same. My father owned a ranch down in Texas. He was a hard man, believed in breaking things to make them useful. Horses, cattle, sons. I left when I was 14 because I could not stand to be broken. Spent years drifting, working wherever I could, and I learned something important. Freedom is not something you take for granted. It is something you fight for, and sometimes you fight for other people's freedom too, because that is what makes us human instead of animals." He turned to look at her, and even in the dimness she could see the intensity in his eyes. "When you walked into that camp last night, I saw someone fighting for her freedom. How could I not help?" Priscilla felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the weather. "You are a good man, Finn Hawthorne. I am a man who is trying to be good." "There is a difference," he smiled slightly. "You are brave, you know. A lot of people would have just accepted what Blackwell wanted, given up." "I thought about it," she admitted. "It would have been easier in some ways, but you would have died inside. I could see that in you, that you were someone who would rather face the unknown than accept a cage." Finn hesitated, then added, "I admire that." The air between them felt charged suddenly, aware. Priscilla's heart beat faster, and she did not think it was just from fear anymore. This man, this near stranger, saw her in a way no one else ever had. He saw her as strong, as brave, as worth saving. "We should get back," Finn said, but he did not move immediately. They stood there a moment longer, the creek singing its night song, before they finally turned and walked back to camp. The next days fell into a rhythm. They traveled from dawn to dusk, the herd moving steadily north. Priscilla grew more comfortable on horseback, her muscles adapting to the constant motion. She learned the names of all the cowboys. Ben, who had been working cattle for 30 years. Jorge, who sang Spanish songs to soothe the herd at night. Tommy, barely 18 and eager to prove himself. Others whose stories emerged around the campfires. And she learned about Finn. He was a natural leader, she saw, the kind of man others followed not because he demanded it, but because he earned it through competence and fairness. He worked harder than anyone, was always the first up and the last to sleep. But he also laughed easily, told stories, listened when others talked. The cowboys respected him, and she understood why. She also noticed the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she was not paying attention. It was not like Cyrus's greedy assessment. It was softer, almost wondering, as though he could not quite believe she was real. A week into the journey, they stopped in a small settlement to resupply. Finn insisted on buying Priscilla proper trail clothes, trousers, a sturdy shirt, boots that fit correctly. She protested the expense, but he waved her off. "You cannot ride in a dress for another 3 weeks. And you have earned your keep. You have been helping with the cooking and camp chores. Consider it wages." In the general store, away from the eyes of the cowboys, Priscilla tried on the new clothes and looked at herself in the small, cloudy mirror. She looked different somehow, stronger. The woman staring back at her had sun-darkened cheeks and wind-blown hair and eyes that no longer held quite so much fear. You look like a real trail hand, Finn said from behind her, and she jumped. She had not heard him approach. I look like a woman in trousers, Priscilla said, but she was smiling. You look like someone who knows where she is going. Finn's voice was quiet. That is more important than what you are wearing. She turned to face him, suddenly very aware of how close he was standing. Where am I going, Finn? Wherever you choose. Montana, California, Oregon, anywhere, he paused. I hope you will stay with us at least until Virginia City. But that is your decision. And after Virginia City, where will you go? Back south, probably. Pick up another herd, do it all again. It is the life I know. Something flickered in his eyes. But lately I have been thinking maybe I want to know something else too. Before Priscilla could ask what he meant, the storekeeper called out that their order was ready. The moment broke, and they returned to the practical business of supplies and payment. But the conversation lingered in Priscilla's mind as they rode out of the settlement and back to the herd. What did Finn Hawthorne want? And why did the question make her pulse race? 2 weeks into the journey, they faced their first real crisis. A storm rolled in from the west, dark clouds piling up like mountains in the sky. The cattle grew nervous, and the cowboys worked to keep them calm and moving. But when the thunder started, deep booms that rattled the earth, the herd spooked. Priscilla had heard of stampedes but never witnessed one. The sound was terrifying, hundreds of animals running in blind panic, their hooves shaking the ground. She froze on Daisy's back, unsure what to do. Then Finn was there, his horse pressing close. Ride with me. Stay right on my left side. Do not fall behind. She obeyed without question, urging Daisy to keep pace with Finn's horse. They galloped alongside the stampeding cattle, and gradually she understood what he was doing. He was not trying to stop them head-on, which would be impossible. He was angling them, using his horse and his presence to guide them in a curve, letting their own momentum turn them until they were running in a circle rather than a straight line. Other cowboys did the same from different positions, and slowly, incredibly, the herd began to calm. The circle tightened, the cattle slowed, and finally they stopped, blowing and wild-eyed but no longer running. Priscilla's hands shook on the reins. Her heart felt like it might burst from her chest, but she was still in the saddle, still safe. She looked at Finn, who was breathing hard but grinning. "You did good," he said. "Most people would have fallen off or run the other way. I was too scared to do anything but follow you. Sometimes that is exactly the right thing to do." His grin softened into something warmer. "You are a natural, Priscilla. I am not just saying that." Hearing him use her first name sent a little thrill through her. He had been calling her Miss Garrett for weeks, maintaining a careful formality. But now, mud-splattered and exhausted in the aftermath of a stampede, that formality had slipped. "Call me Finn," he said, as if reading her thoughts. "I think we have moved past last names, Don, not you." "Finn," she repeated, and liked the way it felt in her mouth. That night, the atmosphere in camp was celebratory despite the exhaustion. They had not lost a single head of cattle, and no one had been injured. Jorge broke out a bottle of whiskey he had been saving, and they passed it around along with stories of other stampedes, other storms, other close calls. Priscilla sat beside Finn, their shoulders almost touching, and felt more content than she had in years. She belonged here, she realized. Not permanently, perhaps, but in this moment she was part of something larger than herself. She was part of a team, a family of sorts, and that feeling was more intoxicating than any whiskey. "What are you thinking?" Finn asked quietly, under the cover of Tommy's enthusiastic retelling of his first cattle drive. "That I am happy," Priscilla said. "That sounds strange, does not it?" "I have nothing. No home, no money, no plan, but I am happy." "It does not sound strange at all." Finn's hand moved so slowly she could have stopped it until his fingers rested over hers. The touch was light, questioning. "You are free. Freedom is worth more than gold." She turned her hand over, lacing her fingers with his. Neither of them spoke, but the connection said everything words could not. 3 days later, they reached Virginia City. The town sprawled across the hills, a testament to the mining boom that had created it. Even now, years after the initial rush, it bustled with activity. Finn led them to a ranch on the outskirts owned by a man named Robert Halsey, who bought cattle and had been expecting their arrival. The transaction took most of the day. Finn negotiated prices, counted heads, signed paperwork. Priscilla stayed with the Cowboys, aware that she was at a crossroads. This was where Finn had said he could help her find work, a new start. This was where their journey together ended. The thought made her chest ache. That evening, after Finn had paid the Cowboys their wages and they had scattered into town to find baths and saloons and soft beds, he came to find her. She was sitting on the porch of the bunkhouse Halsey had offered them for the night, watching the sun set behind the mountains. "We need to talk," Finn said, and her heart sank. Those words never meant anything good. He sat beside her, his hat in his hands, turning it in circles. For a long moment he did not speak, and Priscilla braced herself for whatever goodbye was coming. "I have been thinking," Finn said finally, "about what comes next. For me and for you and for us." "Us," she whispered. "Priscilla, I did not plan for this. When I offered to help you, I thought I was just doing a good deed, paying forward a debt, like I said, but somewhere between boys and here something changed." He looked at her, and his eyes were full of emotion that made her breath catch. "I have fallen in love with you. I know I have no right. I know you probably need time to figure out your own life without some cowboy complicating things, but I cannot let you walk away without telling you the truth. I love you. I love your courage and your strength and the way you laugh at Ben's terrible jokes. I love that you did not give up when you had every reason to. I love you and I want you to stay, not just here but with me, wherever that is." Priscilla could not breathe, could not think. The words she had not dared to hope for hung in the air between them, real and terrifying and wonderful. "I do not have anything to offer you," Finn continued, his voice rough. "I live on the trail. I sleep on the ground more often than not. I make decent money, but I am not rich. I cannot promise you an easy life, but I can promise you freedom and honesty and all the love I have in me. If that is enough, if you feel even a fraction for me what I feel for you, then stay, please." "You are wrong," Priscilla said and watched his face fall. She rushed on. "You are wrong that you have nothing to offer. Finn, you gave me everything. You gave me my life back. You saw me as a person worth saving when I was beginning to doubt that myself. And yes, somewhere between boys and here, I fell in love with you too. I was afraid to admit it, afraid that I was just grateful and confusing that with love. But it is not gratitude. It is love. Real, terrifying, wonderful love." "Priscilla," he breathed, and then his hands were framing her face and his lips were on hers. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, then deeper as she responded. She tasted trail dust and coffee and hope, and she wrapped her arms around his neck and held on like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Finn rested his forehead against hers. "Is that a yes? You will stay with me?" "Yes. Wherever you go, I go. Whatever you do, I am with you." She kissed him again, quick and fierce. "I love you, Finn Hawthorne. I love you, Priscilla Garrett. And I am going to spend the rest of my life proving you did not make a mistake trusting me." They sat on that porch until the stars came out, talking about everything and nothing. Plans began to form. Finn had saved money over the years, enough to buy land if they found the right place. Maybe they could start their own ranch, something small at first. Or maybe they would keep working for others for a while, building up resources. The details did not matter as much as the fact that they would figure it out together. The next morning, Finn surprised her by taking her to the small church in Virginia City. "I know we have not been courting properly," he said. "And if you want a long engagement, I understand, but I have never been more sure of anything in my life. Will you marry me, Priscilla? Today, if you are willing. Tomorrow, if you need time. But soon. I want to spend my life with you, and I do not want to wait." She said yes with tears streaming down her face. They were married that afternoon by a preacher who barely blinked at the speed of it. Ben and Jorge stood as witnesses, both grinning like fools. Priscilla wore a simple dress bought from a dry goods store that morning, and Finn wore his cleanest shirt and a new hat. It was nothing like the wedding she had once imagined as a girl, but it was perfect. That night, in a hotel room that was the height of luxury after weeks on the trail, Finn made love to his wife with a gentleness that made her cry again. He worshipped her body like it was holy, and she discovered that intimacy could be beautiful when it was chosen, when it was with someone who loved you as much as you loved them. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and Finn traced patterns on her shoulder. "I am the luckiest man alive," he murmured. "We are both lucky," Priscilla corrected. "We found each other." They stayed in Virginia City for a month, working for Robert Halsey and saving money. Finn trained horses while Priscilla kept the ranch books, discovering she had a talent for numbers when they were not being used to trap her. They were building something, brick by brick. One evening, Halsey approached them with a proposition. "I have been watching you too," he said. "You work hard and you work smart. I have a property about 20 miles north of here, along the river. Good grazing land, but I do not have time to manage it properly. What would you say to running it for me? I will give you a fair wage plus a percentage of the profits. And if things go well, maybe in a few years we talk about you buying it outright." Finn looked at Priscilla, and she saw the hope in his eyes. This was exactly what they had been dreaming about. "What do you think?" he asked her. "It would be hard work. We would be building from nothing." "We are already building from nothing," Priscilla said, "and doing a pretty good job of it. I say yes." They shook hands with Halsey that night, and 2 weeks later they moved to the property. It was beautiful in a wild, rough way. The cabin was small but sturdy, and the land stretched away in rolling hills perfect for cattle. They spent the fall and winter fixing up the place, working until their bodies ached but their hearts were full. Sometimes Priscilla thought about Cyrus Blackwell and the trading post in Boise. She wondered if he was still there, still trapping desperate people in webs of false debt. She hoped someone had stopped him, but she did not know. What she did know was that he had no power over her anymore. That part of her life was ash, burned away in a campfire under the stars. Their first spring on the ranch, Priscilla discovered she was pregnant. Finn's joy was incandescent. He treated her like she was made of glass for the first few weeks until she laughingly told him to stop. She was pregnant, not dying. But his protectiveness was sweet, and she loved him for it. Their son was born in January of 1878, during a snowstorm that trapped them in the cabin for 3 days. Finn delivered the baby himself with help from a book and sheer determination. And when he placed the squalling infant in Priscilla's arms, she saw tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," Finn whispered. "You are perfect. I love you so much." They named him Samuel after Priscilla's brother. He was a healthy, loud baby who grew into a curious toddler, then an adventurous little boy. 2 years later, their daughter Grace arrived, and 3 years after that, another son they called James. The cabin was bursting at the seams, so they built an addition, then another. The ranch grew too, cattle and horses both, until they were making enough profit that Halsey agreed to sell them the land outright. Years passed in a blur of work and joy and the occasional hardship. There were difficult calving seasons and harsh winters, times when money was tight and they worried. But they faced everything together, Finn and Priscilla, the cowboy and the woman he had walked out of captivity. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Finn took Priscilla back to the spot where they had camped that first night after leaving Boys. The place was unchanged, the cottonwoods still standing tall, the creek still singing its eternal song. "You ever regret it?" Finn asked as they sat on a blanket under the stars, much as they had all those years ago. "Trusting me, coming with me," Priscilla laughed. "Are you serious?" "Finn, you gave me everything. You gave me freedom and love and a family. You gave me a life I did not even know I could have. My only regret is that I did not come find you sooner. I am glad you did not. You might have found me too young and stupid to be worth your time." He kissed her softly. "I love you more now than I did the day I married you. I did not know that was possible, but every day with you just makes it grow. I love you too, always." She snuggled into his arms, content. "Tell me again about burning the ledger." It had become one of their favorite stories over the years, something they told their children when they were old enough to understand. The story of the cowboy who burned the ledger and walked her out. The story of choosing freedom over fear. Finn obliged, his voice warm and steady as he recounted that night. Priscilla closed her eyes and listened, remembering. She remembered her terror and desperation. She remembered the flames consuming Cyrus's lies. She remembered the moment she had decided to trust this stranger with her life. Best decision she had ever made. Their children grew up strong and happy. Samuel became a rancher like his father, taking over more and more of the work as Finn's hair went gray. Grace married a doctor and moved to Helena but visited often. James surprised everyone by becoming a teacher, using the love of learning Priscilla had instilled in all her children. Finn and Priscilla grew old together on the ranch they had built. They added grandchildren to the family, then great-grandchildren. The cabin expanded again and again, becoming a sprawling house full of life and laughter. On quiet evenings when the work was done and the family had scattered to their own homes, Finn and Priscilla would sit on the porch and watch the sun set behind the mountains. They did not always talk. Sometimes the silence was enough, comfortable and easy. But sometimes Priscilla would look at her husband, at the lines time had etched in his face and the silver in his hair, and feel her heart swell with love so powerful it took her breath away. "What are you thinking?" Finn would ask, noticing her gaze. "That I am the luckiest woman in the world," she would reply, and she meant it. Every single time, the years continued to roll by gentle and good. Finn and Priscilla celebrated their 25th anniversary, then their 30th. The ranch thrived, a testament to their hard work and partnership. They were fixtures in the community, known and respected. People came to them for advice, for help, for the wisdom that came from a lifetime of facing challenges together. Priscilla sometimes worked with women in difficult situations, quietly helping them find ways out. She never forgot what it felt like to be trapped, and she used her resources and connections to ensure other women did not have to endure what she had. Finn supported her fully, proud of the difference she made. "You are still saving people," he told her once, "just in a different way." "We are saving people," she corrected. "I could not do it without you." "Partners," he agreed, kissing the top of her head. "Always partners." When they were in their 60s, a young woman came to the ranch seeking work. She was thin and haunted-looking, with bruises she tried to hide and a desperation in her eyes that Priscilla recognized immediately. Priscilla hired her on the spot, and over the following months the woman's story came out in pieces. An abusive husband, a claim of debt, a trap that looked hauntingly familiar. Priscilla and Finn helped her, just as they had helped others over the years. They gave her safety, work, and time to heal. When she was ready, they helped her file for divorce, a legal process that had become slightly easier over the decades but was still fraught with difficulty. They stood by her through all of it. Years later, that same woman, happily remarried to a kind rancher, named her daughter Priscilla in honor of the woman who had saved her. These were the legacies that mattered, Priscilla thought. Not just the land or the cattle, but the lives they had touched, the ripples they had sent out into the world. When Priscilla turned 65, the whole family gathered for a celebration. Children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren filled the house to bursting. There was music and dancing, laughter and storytelling. At one point, Finn pulled Priscilla onto the porch away from the chaos. "Too much for you?" she asked, smiling. "Just wanted a moment alone with my wife." He took her hands. "You know what I think about when I see all this? All these people." "What?" "I think about a young woman who had the courage to walk into a cattle camp in the middle of the night and ask for help. I think about how close we came to never meeting. If you had not been brave enough to leave Blackwell, if you had not trusted me, none of this would exist. Not our family, not our life, none of it. You created all of this, Priscilla. Your courage started it all." "Our courage," she corrected, but she was crying. "You had to be brave too. You had to be willing to risk yourself for a stranger." "Best risk I ever took." He kissed her soft and sweet. "I love you. After all these years, after everything, I love you more than words can say." "I love you too, so much." She rested her head on his shoulder, listening to the sounds of their family inside. "We did good, did not we? We did great." They stood there as the sun set. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from ashes and courage. Years continued to pass. Finn's health began to decline when he was in his early 70s, his body wearing out from a lifetime of hard work. But his mind stayed sharp, and his love for Priscilla never wavered. She cared for him with the same devotion he had always shown her, and their children helped, surrounding them both with love. One evening, as they sat together on the porch with blankets wrapped around their shoulders against the autumn chill, Finn said quietly, "I am ready, you know. When it is time, I have had a good life, the best life, because of you." "You are not leaving me yet," Priscilla said fiercely. "We have more time. I hope so. But if we do not, I want you to know something." He took her hand. "You saved me just as much as I saved you, maybe more. I was drifting before you, just moving through life without any real purpose. You gave me purpose. You gave me a reason to be the man I wanted to be. So thank you, for trusting me, for loving me, for giving me a life worth living." Priscilla was crying openly now. "You gave me the same thing. We saved each other." "Yes," Finn agreed, smiling. "We did." Finn Hawthorne passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 months later with Priscilla holding his hand. He was 74 years old. The funeral was attended by what seemed like half the territory, people whose lives he had touched over the decades. They told stories of his kindness, his fairness, his quiet strength. Priscilla grieved deeply, as did their children and grandchildren. But even in her sorrow, she felt gratitude. How many people got to have a love like theirs? How many people got to build a life so full of meaning and joy? She stayed on the ranch, now run by Samuel and his sons, and spent her time with her garden and her grandchildren and her quiet memories. She lived to see the new century arrive, lived to see motor cars and telephones become common. The world changed around her, but the core of who she was remained the same. A woman who had chosen courage over fear, freedom over captivity. When Priscilla Garrett Hawthorne passed away in her sleep at the age of 81, she was surrounded by family. Her last thoughts were of a September night in 1876, of a cowboy with kind eyes holding a ledger over a campfire, of the flames consuming her past and illuminating her future. She died smiling. The ranch continued for generations after, passed down through the family. Samuel's children told their children the story, and those children told their children, until it became family legend. The story of how their great-great-grandmother had been trapped by a cruel man, and how their great-great-grandfather had burned the ledger and walked her out into freedom and love. In the town that grew up around the ranch, a small historical marker was eventually placed. It commemorated the Hawthorne Ranch and the couple who had founded it, noting their contributions to the community and their legacy of helping those in need. But the real legacy was not in markers or history books. It was in the descendants who carried forward the values Finn and Priscilla had lived by: courage, compassion, partnership, and the unshakable belief that everyone deserved freedom and dignity. It was in the women who were helped over the generations, who found safety and support when they needed it most. It was in the love that had started with a desperate gamble and a cowboy's kindness, and had grown into something that touched countless lives. The trading post in Boise eventually closed, Cyrus Blackwell having been exposed years later for fraud and forced to leave town in disgrace. The building fell into disrepair and was eventually torn down. But the ranch Finn and Priscilla built stood strong, a testament to what could be created when two people chose to fight for each other and for what was right. And somewhere in the fabric of the universe, in whatever comes after this life, two souls found each other again. The cowboy and the woman he had loved, the man who had burned the ledger, the woman who had been brave enough to walk out, together, as they had always been meant to be. Their story became the kind that mothers told daughters, fathers told sons. A story about the wild days of the West, yes, but more importantly, a story about the choice to help, the courage to trust, and the power of love to transform lives. Samuel Hawthorne, now an old man himself, would gather the youngest grandchildren and tell them about their ancestors. He would describe how his father had once been a trail boss, how his mother had fled from captivity, how they had met and fallen in love and built everything the family now enjoyed. The most important thing to remember, Samuel would always say, is that they chose each other. Every day, through good times and bad, they chose love and partnership. That is what made them great. Not the land, not the money, not the success. The choice to love and support each other no matter what. And the children would listen, wide-eyed, imagining a time when their great-grandparents were young and brave and building a life from nothing but courage and hope. The story lived on, as the best stories do. It was told at weddings and anniversaries, at family gatherings and quiet bedtime moments. It was adapted and embellished, details changing with each retelling, but the heart of it remained true. A trading post owner tried to keep her captive. A cowboy burned the ledger and walked her out. And they lived and loved and built something beautiful together, a legacy that would endure long after they were gone in the end. That was all anyone could ask for. To love and be loved, to make a difference, to leave the world a little better than they found it. Finn and Priscilla Hawthorne had done all of that and more. Their story was not just about the Old West or cattle ranching or even about escape and freedom, though it was all those things. It was about the transformative power of compassion, the strength found in partnership, and the truth that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is trust another person with your whole heart. The ranch still stood, generations later, the land still fertile and beautiful. And on quiet evenings when the wind blew just right, people swore they could hear echoes of laughter, the sounds of a long-ago celebration, the voices of two people who had found their forever in each other's arms, the cowboy and his love, the woman and her savior, partners, equals, soulmates. Their story was complete, their legacy secure, their love eternal. And that, as all the best stories do, made all the difference.